Now, Donna, this isn't a full reopening to tourists from anywhere and everywhere, is it?
Not quite, no. There are still some restrictions and people will have to come as part of a group tour. So there's no individual tourist visas being offered at the moment. But if people come in a group and stay within the group and follow I believe it's a 16-page book of guidelines, they can spend some time in Japan, yes.
What is in that book of guidelines? What restrictions are still in place for travellers, including Australians intending to holiday in Japan? What do they have to be mindful of when booking tickets, and do they have to wear masks?
Yes, masks are still very much required. Just recently, the government did say to most of us, if we're outdoors and we're not near anybody and it's all quite safe, we can take our masks off. But masks are still required indoors, on public transport, anywhere that's going to be close to people. And so they're asking that you keep your masks on. We still have hand sanitisers everywhere you go, and in some places like my workplace here, we have thermal cameras to make sure that your temperature is sitting at the right, below 36 or around about 36 degrees Celsius and so on. So those sorts of things will be required, and I do believe also that they'll be asked to have some health insurance to cover any medical emergencies and things like that.
And testing and quarantine requirements, are they strict?
It depends now on which country you come from. There's a kind of a traffic light, red, yellow, green, of different countries. Australia's in the green country at the moment. And I think people, if they've had the required vaccinations and boosters, there's not a quarantine period required. Depending again on the country that you come from, it may be 3 days, it may be 7 days. It just, there are some restrictions, but I think at the moment, if Australians come in one of those group tours and they stick to all the rules, it should be okay. Okay,
it's definitely less strict than before. I've noticed that you've noticed that Australia's flu levels have not gone unnoticed in Japan. Are there concerns around this as the country opens up to tourists?
Well, this is interesting. When I got home last night and was watching the late evening news, there was quite a lengthy broadcast actually following the coincidence of COVID and the flu in Australia as we're going into winter. Now, this happened also back in 2020. Japan was very keen to watch how countries in the Southern Hemisphere, particularly Australia and New Zealand, were going to handle COVID going into winter. But certainly last night, yes, there was a lot of attention given to the flu and how much it's increasing, what that's going to do with COVID. And I think too, with the case numbers, the case load that seems to be happening in Australia, as much as I can see anyway, there might be a little bit of concern that the case numbers are quite high in Australia at the moment, certainly.
It definitely is going around from my experience here anyway. And I guess when gauging how locals are feeling about this and the reopening, it really depends on who you talk to, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and obviously the TV programs in the last couple of days have been going to all the very popular tourist areas that have suffered, very much over the last 2 years. And of course, people there for whom tourism is their business, it's their livelihood, are very keen, and you could see them opening up all the new boxes of goods and things. They're very keen to be showing Japan off again in different ways to people as they come back and all the rest. On the other hand, a lot of some tourism operators that I've been speaking to as well have said that actually this is also an opportunity to look at more sustainable tourism, and that they want to look at ways that people can still have a very rich experience. But given our COVID experiences in the last couple of years, how can that tourism be much more sustainable? It might be keeping people in smaller groups or getting them out into the regions and doing things like that to sort of avoid the crowds that we tend to see here in Tokyo and the rest. But I think sustainability is coming through as a particular aspect that
it's interesting how the pandemic has changed the way we live and how we look at certain issues, isn't it? Can you tell us, has life pretty much returned to normal in Japan? Public transport's up and running, people are back at work, entertainment venues back to full capacity?
Pretty much. The trains are getting back to, if I have to come to work early, it's a bit crowded and I have to stand. And fortunately tonight going home, it probably won't be as crowded as it might otherwise be. People are still trying to keep their distance. Our classes here at university, though, we're still required to wear masks. I mean, I'm in my office at the moment by myself, which is why I don't have my mask on. But our classes, some are face-to-face, a lot are still online, depending on the size of the classes. So people are taking it fairly cautiously at the moment, I think.
Thanks for staying behind at work for us too, by the way. Is COVID still very much a concern in the community there? What are case numbers like at the moment?
Well, we still get our notifications at about 4:45 every day. We sit and look. Today was only about 1,600 in Tokyo. So the case numbers are coming down, and I noticed they had that, sadly 3 people had died, which I know is a big contrast with Australia. Yes, people are still concerned, but vaccination rates are up and things like that. So some students have been catching COVID and staying away, but yeah, it's still here, but we're learning to, I guess, live with it. Yeah.
And just very quickly, Donna, how do these new reopening rules affect travellers wanting to leave the country? Personally, for you, what will these changes mean?
Well, hopefully I'll be able to get back into Australia at some point. It's been a bit hard, obviously, for a lot of Australians overseas not being able to get back home. But I think it should be, provided the flights are available. I mean, Qantas still isn't flying, for example, so we have to wait and see whether or not we can get a flight. But certainly compared with even, say, 3 months ago, it should be getting easier for all of us, I would hope anyway. So I'd be looking forward to seeing a lot more Australians coming and visiting us here anyway. So, and also being in charge of the student study abroad program too. Our students are finally being able to go and study overseas, and students will be able to coming to study as well. So that's a really exciting thing for them.
Yeah. Oh, well, great to talk, Donna. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Yvonne. My pleasure.